And help me welcome back Eric Christopher.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks. Thank you for inviting me back here today at Lake Harriet Spiritual Community on this beautiful spring morning. Thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here today, and it's an honor here to speak at such a community that fosters such growth, healing, and spiritual awakening. So I'm so glad to be part of it. Today I'm going to speak for, 20, 25 minutes, and then I'm going to do about a 15-minute guided journey to help us connect to a higher aspect of ourselves today. We can slice and dice reality up in many different ways, but today I'm going to slice and dice it up in this way. Think of us as having two parts. One part of us is this body, mind, personality. This body, mind, personality that has an ego. Then there's that light, energy, and consciousness that animates this body. That's that soul aspect of yourself. It's pure light, energy, and consciousness. And it vibrates so fast when we're not attached to the body that most of us can't see it. In fact, there's probably many souls in this room already right now that most of us don't see because they're vibrating at such a high level of frequency. And in fact, the higher you go in your frequency, the higher you go in your spiritual dimension after you die, the more love-based you feel. Now, remember, there's two parts to us. This body, mind, personality part tends to be, it has an ego, and it tends to operate from this identity of this body-mind system. But this body dies at some point. And so therefore there's a lot of unconscious fears that go with that. Also, this body-mind operates mostly from the programming and conditioning that it grew up with. And so we become identified with this body-mind system. The key of liberation is to identify more and more with that aspect of yourself that's eternal, that's indestructible, outside of time and space, and it is based in love. One could say that that's a more real part of you than the part that dies. The part that's more permanent, the part that's more real and authentic and true is the part that continues on. And one day you won't be your body, but try to not be your soul. You can't. It's who and what you already are. And what spiritual awakening is simply a radical shift in identity, identifying less from this ego body-mind aspect and more from this aspect of self that's eternal, outside of time and space, doesn't need food, doesn't decay, doesn't need food and water in the soul realm. It doesn't decay, doesn't rot, your soul, it doesn't die ever. And that's who and what you are. This part of us, that soul aspect, tends to operate more from power. And the ego, body, mind, personality tends to operate more from force. This month's topic is power versus force, so I'm going to speak a bit about that today. Dr. David Hawkins, who is an author, a doctor, and an awakened being, he wrote a book called Power versus Force. And in that, he characterizes the difference between power and force. And I'm going to read a little bit about how he characterizes the differences. And your job is to guess what sounds more like it comes from the soul part and what more sounds like it comes from the ego part of us. David Hawkins says, force is incomplete and has to be fed energy constantly. But power is complete in itself and requires nothing from the outside. It makes no demands and has no needs. Force has an insatiable appetite and it constantly consumes. Power, in contrast, energizes, gives, supplies, supports. Power gives life energy. Force takes this away. Power is associated with compassion, makes us feel positive about ourselves, whereas force is associated with judgment, makes us feel poorly about ourselves. Do you know that we judge others to the direct proportion that we unconsciously judge ourselves? Something to keep in mind. Force can bring satisfaction, but only power brings joy. Victory over others brings us satisfaction, but victory over ourselves brings joy. What is victory over ourselves? I would say victory over ourselves would be victory over this body-mind identification. Do you know what an incredible, magnificent, eternal soul being you are? You are all very brave here. And I've mentioned this before in another talk. But when you incarnate here, you do something extremely brave. You consciously cut yourself off from your higher self and your conscious connection to source energy. Your conscious connection to all of the love, the joy, the safety, and security that this ego, body, mind, personality is seeking outside of us. You already are that in the soul realm, and you already know that. But what you all have done is something that some souls would never even want to do, and that is to incarnate into this very deep, low vibrational dimension, third dimension of this physical reality, where this is a place of forgetfulness. This is a place of forgetting who and what we really are while we're here. Because when you incarnate here and you are consciously, all of a sudden then you become dependent on mom and dad or your caregivers for a sense of safety, security, a sense of well-being, a sense of feeling loved, wanted, valued, safe, secure. But because you're being raised by humans, and humans tend to have their own baggage and issues, sometimes mom and dad aren't able to be there, to be fully present with us in a way that we need them to be. And if that happens, if there's neglect or abuse in this growing up experience, that's when unworthy programs can begin to happen. Unworthy programs unconsciously, and maybe not even unconsciously, they tend to go along with this body. Why? Because when we are born, thus birth begins the trauma of separation. We have these separate bodies, and a certain movement or a dance begins to happen when we're young. We get this habit pattern of looking outside of us. First, of course, you need to rely on mom and dad, and you're growing, for food, shelter, clothing, and all of this stuff, but a sense of well-being and a sense of okayness. So we look for our sense of identity outside of us. So if there were going to be a movement or a dance, if I were going to characterize the ego in a charade, perhaps, it would be this. The ego's trying to get a sense of safety, love, security, sense of well-being, a sense of identity outside of us. How are others looking at me? If I were to act out what the soul is, that other part of you, it would be more like this. It would be, what can I give? What can I give? You already are all the love and the joy, the safety that you're seeking. As Paramahansa Yogananda said, we come from love, we go back to love, and you are love while you're here. And in that soul realm, if you move a little bit higher into the soul realm after you incarnate, so it's said, is that love is almost like the oxygen. You just feel it all around you as you incarnate higher. So we come from that place. And that's who and what we are while we're here. But of course we forget that. And so what we're here is to help identify more with this part of ourselves that doesn't die. Neil Donald Walsh, author of Conversations with God series, wonderful book series, he says that the more relationships are, they go so much better when we view them not as a container to grab something, not as a cookie tray to grab something from. Many of us in our relationships, because we get identified with this human ego aspect, which tends to be based in separation and lack, we view relationships as a cookie tray to grab something from often. Rather than if you can view relationships as a container to pour something into, just that mental switch makes all the difference. Neil Donald Walsh also goes on to say, you want more love in your life? Cause another to feel loved. You want more joy in your life? Cause another to feel joy. Experiment with it. And we're both. It's not like we're either a soul and a body. We're both and. And you know something? We can slip in and out of this in being love-based or lack-based or fear-based, through different times. For instance, I'll give an example. I worked on a psychiatric unit for 23 years, half-time. And while I was building up my private practice, but I remember seeing many people come in, and when they come in, depressed, suicidal, shut down, empty, big place of lack. But I remember seeing some of those people a day or two later, or even a few hours later, being out on the unit, seeing another person who was in a more difficult spot than them. Maybe they were handicapped or something, but then wanting to help them out. And just in that moment, they switched from lack to what can I give, that love aspect of themselves, unconsciously. Neil Donald Walsh calls this, David Hawkins, he talks about power versus force. Neil Donald Walsh kind of talks about the similar thing, only he's using love versus fear. And what he will say is that all of our thoughts and actions are sponsored by either love or fear. And I'm going to read what he writes, and just let yourself feel. If you ever want to know if somebody or a person or a company or a government or you are coming from love or fear, this is a good way. Just feel these words. He says, all human thought and actions are based in either fear or love, ego or spirit. He articulates, fear is the energy which contracts, closes down, draws in, runs, hides, hoards, harms. Love is the energy which expands, opens up, sends out, stays, reveals, shares, heals. Fear judges, is intolerant. Fear lies beneath anger, and it holds on to it. Whereas love empathizes. Love is tolerant. It seeks understanding. Fear feels lack. Love feels wholeness, completeness, that all needs are met. Fear separates and divides and is based on conditional acceptance. Love sees and feels oneness. Love unites and is based on unconditional acceptance. The communication of fear is vague, indirect, and withholding of truth, whereas the communication of love is clear, direct, honest, and specific. The relationships tend to thrive the more they're based on clear, direct, honest, transparent communication. Love allows. Fear controls to get its needs met. Fear takes, love gives. And Neil Donald Walsh will often challenge us when we're faced with a situation of what should we do. He'll say, in a stressful situation, what would the highest form of love do? That's a good question to ask. So, you want to know how to expand and raise your vibration? This I get from the words of, his name is Jürgen Ziewe, another one of my favorite books. This guy learned to astral project. Through meditation and lucid dreaming, he found he could get out of his body. And then he realized, he could pierce through different dimensions. He wrote a book called The Multidimensional Man, How to Enjoy Life After You're Dead. He says he pierced through the dimensions so that he was able to see his mother who had died. He said he's had contact with her a dozen different times. Every time he sees her, she looks very different. And when he sees her, when you astral project, it's like when he sees her, he's seeing her as clearly as you and I. He says that feels just as real and solid as this physical realm. It's not some airy-fairy place. But he will say that if you want to, just keep this in mind after we've all died. If you want to raise in vibration, to move the higher dimensions, just cultivate a gratitude and love and appreciation. Finding a way to do that will just raise your vibration even higher, and you can find that you can move into these higher dimensions much more easily. And there are many, that's another topic for a different day, but all the various dimensions that we can move to and go to. But if you can do that in the soul realm to raise yourself up, here we're attached to these bodies, but nothing can raise your vibration more than a sense of love, gratitude, appreciation. So we have these two parts to us. One part it operates more from that ego part of lack. If we're not conscious. See, when we're not conscious of our thoughts, that's the thing. It's not obvious that we're these soul selves. It seems so obvious we're these separate bodies. Well, of course, that is true. We are. But we always forget we're also that light energy and consciousness that animates it. You're more that than you are the body. Any of the fear-based beliefs that this ego has, they're all untrue from the vantage point of the soul. And sometimes you need to get to the vantage point of the soul to experience that. And I'll give some examples. When I do past life regression and I do life between lives work, and I remember a woman coming to me, and it's different than astral projecting, if you've ever done. Astral projecting, your soul leaves the body when you're doing, and so therefore you're seeing dimensions as clearly as you and I are. So past life regression is different. It's more you're tuning into that soul aspect of yourself by quieting this analytical thinking mind down more and more. And you're tuning more systematically into that soul aspect of yourself, which, by the way, we're going to do a little later today, after I finish talking. But I remember a woman came to me, and she was so fraught because she was around 60 years old, and her mother had died, and she just had tears, and she said, I just need to know that my mother loved me. she never showed that. And so we did a past life regression. Basically, when you do past life regression, I'd rather call it higher self therapy, because whatever the images that are, sometimes they're historical past lives your soul has lived. I know that because we've done research and verified. But who knows? I mean, it could just be something that your higher mind wants to show you. You just never know. But when you go within and you ask for something, what's for my highest benefit to see, you go within, you tend to get something that you need to help you move forward. So this is an example. Yeah, she ended up going to a life in which she was quite wealthy. There was nothing to want for, she said. She had many children. She had a special bond with one daughter. But one day that daughter got sick and very quickly died. Fell ill and died, very quickly. And she was so grief-stricken that she could not give love to her other kids. There's just too much grief in the way. And when she was in the soul realm, one of her biggest regrets, after that life was over, she lived this life with a huge cloud of grief on her. But when she got into the soul realm, first of all, one of the first things she noticed was that the eternal aspect of herself could call upon and commence with the eternal aspect of her daughter, feel her energy. And then she realized that, through that, she could actually, if she really tuned in, could feel her daughter's love and presence throughout. But when she looked back on her life, her biggest regret was, she said, I had love for my kids, but I just didn't know how to share it because it was so covered up with grief. But then all of a sudden a light bulb went on her head. She said, oh my gosh, that's just the way my mother's life was. She loved us, but she didn't know how to show it. She couldn't show it. She was too heavy with her own losses. And then about 3 weeks later, I got an email from her saying, that session changed my life because I now know that my mother loved me. Beyond through the whole core of my being, I know that. And that's something that I could never intellectually get. Well, what happened there? Well, her logical, analytical mind might want to always say, yeah, she probably loved me, yeah. But there was part of her deep down that didn't know that. But as you go within and you start to tune into a higher soul aspect of yourself, well, then you're at a higher level. You see through the eyes of wisdom, insight, and clarity. And you see more through the eyes of love. And you see the truth of things from that higher vibration place. I'll give you another interesting example of living from your ego versus soul. And another woman came to me years ago that went to a past life where it was a couple 100 years ago, and she was in a family where she was fairly wealthy, but she fell in love and had an affair and got pregnant with a young man who was not of the same social class. And she was pregnant, and her family was so ashamed of that because a status was everything. They whisked her off into a convent where she had the baby, and they later got rid of the baby in an adoption. But because they were so ashamed of her, they made her stay in this convent. Well, that's not at all what she wanted, and she escaped, but they caught her, brought her back, and she was in this convent. They ended up having to chain her down there to make her stay there. She was so angry that she found a way to poison herself, and she died. And her soul, what did her soul do? Her soul was so angry that it stayed earthbound around there and haunted that convent. And she said, every time they light a candle, I blow it out. And one time I just took a whole stack of Bibles and just threw them down on the ground, and I was so much anger and force I could do that. And they knew it was me. And so they brought in some priests and an exorcist. They did a priest and did some sort of a exorcism type thing, or not an exorcism, but it would have been a priest to show. But as she started talking about what the priest was doing, all of a sudden sending in, the angels or Jesus of love and light, all of a sudden her vibration started to shift. And her vibration started to shift when she was bombarded with love, light, and then her vibration went higher. And then she said, oh, yeah, it wasn't their fault, the nuns. They that's just what my parents wanted, them to do. And my parents, they were just so concerned with their roles. We were just role-playing down there, and they were just so concerned with their roles. Yeah, that's why. But all of a sudden you can see there's a couple of lessons here. Just because you die doesn't mean you can still be ego-identified. But as you move up higher in that soul realm, higher vibrational frequency, then you can become more love-based and see things with more clarity, see things more from truth. I'll give an example. I mean, it does seem true every day that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Yeah, that's true, it seems. Just like it can seem, if you grow up with a lot of neglect and abuse, it can seem like it can feel like, you're not good enough, you're not worthy of love. That can seem true, but that's not true either. Let's go back to the Earth example. If you were to go to a higher vantage point from outer space, you see that, the sun doesn't rise in the east and sets in the west, it just rotates. And it spins, and it rotates around the sun, and it also rotates and spins, and it creates that appearance. And the same thing when you see things from the vantage point of the soul, you see that these lives are a role play for us, and we're challenging ourselves just being here. We're challenging ourselves. But one of the things we're challenging ourselves about is to not live from fear-based programs and more live from the truth of who and what we are. The love, the joy that we're seeking on the outside, we already are on the inside. And sometimes, though, sometimes it's helpful, I find, to tune into that feeling that is most getting in your way. The limiting beliefs, thoughts, feelings, they all come from your growing up experience. They come from, or sometimes past life, but they all come from outside of ourselves. Any limiting belief that you have, it comes from outside of you. And it's really not true from that higher vantage point. When we do this guided journey, you'll get a flavor of that. But I want to give another example before we do that. A woman came to me not too long ago who had a lot of abuse and neglect in her life, so much anger at her father. But I had her be above a timeline of her life and notice all the times, basically it was much of her childhood, all the times that created that feeling of neglect or anger or whatnot from her father. And just notice on the timelines where that came from, how he made you feel. And we did an exercise where she could feel the anger in her body, and we did an exercise where you just, it's not inherent to your being. Let's release it and give it back to who gave it to you. And when she sent that energy back, visualizing it going back to her dad, when she actually did that, the thoughts dropped in. I didn't even have to ask. Usually I'll have her ask, Fathers are supposed to be loving and they're supposed to be nurturing and supportive. Why did you give me that energy? Well, I didn't even need to ask that, because as she was releasing that, automatically what replaced it was love and clarity. It's like, oh, no one ever made him feel wanted growing up. So then I had her imagine that, she passed that energy that she passed down to Dad, got passed back where he got it from, back through the generations, each one passing it back to the next, because these types of programs, mind programs, belief systems, they tend to get passed down through the generations, almost like an unconscious virus. But when she passed it through the generations, we had her and everybody, just the whole generational line, just throw it in a big fire pit. Let it be converted to pure source energy. And then get back a part of you that was lost and covered up when you took it on. And she could feel that light coming in and replacing that. So the moral of the story is, limiting beliefs are not true. They seem true from one vantage point, but this body-mind doesn't see all of reality. The more we can tune into this other aspect of ourselves, this more permanent part of you that is love-based, we always have a free will choice if we remember where we want to come from. And I'd like to do a guided journey with you today. A guided journey. It's about 13 minutes left. So this is about reconnecting to a higher aspect of yourself. Now, yes, imagination is the gateway to the soul. That's what Edgar Cayce said. He was a mystic in the 30s. So that's exactly what it is. You do this guided journey with your imagination. But if you think you're not why would you be able to feel the higher vibrations of source energy? Because the truth is you're not disconnected from it. We are multidimensional beings. So have that in mind as we do this guided journey for the next 12 or 13 minutes. So everyone close their eyes. And if you don't necessarily have to close them if you don't want. But imagine that you place a circle of light around you about an arm's length away. And then imagine that you draw a dark curtain on anything outside of that circle of light, just so for the next 13 minutes, any distracting thought that can just fade away to non-existence. Anything in work life, home life, things on the to-do list, let that fade to non-existence. You can pick it all up again later afterwards. But for the next 13 minutes, let yourself only focus on that which is on the inside of the circle of light, that which is in your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energy bodies. And now, just tune more into that, and I want you to follow the tone into the silence. As you follow the tone into the silence, let your mind become more and more empty, and your body more and more relaxed, letting go of all the surface level tension in the body. Body and mind releasing, relaxing, emptying, following the tone into the silence. And see, feel, imagine yourself walking down a hallway, feeling your feet as you're walking down this hallway. Up ahead is a stairway that goes down 10 stairs. In a few moments, I'll count you down the stairs. This is a special set of stairs in the sense that with every stair that you hit with your foot in your mind's eye, you sink yet another level deeper in physical and mental relaxation. And another quality of the stairway is this: the closer you get down to that first level stair, the further away we get from this physical realm of time and space and form. And the more you begin to drop down deeper and deeper into yourself, ultimately tuning into a more permanent part of you. So I'm going to count you down the stairs. You can grab a hold of a railing if you'd like, but feel your foot on every stair. So let's drop from 10, drop down to 9. Yet another level deeper in physical and mental relaxation, you drop down to 8. Deeper, deeper, more and more relaxed, you drop down to 7. Letting the physical world fade behind you as you drop down to 6. Going deeper into yourself as you drop down to 5. The physical world continues to fade behind you as you drop down to 4. Going deeper into yourself as you drop down to 3. Deeper, deeper down to 2, and deeper, deeper down to 1. And you step on off now into a beautiful garden. And as you step deeper into the garden, you can kick off your shoes and just feel the soft grass beneath your feet as you place yourself in a day in which the temperature is just perfect and the sun is coming down and warming a certain spot on your forehead, and you can let that warmth just trickle down your whole body, causing you to feel relaxed and calm and at peace. And as you step deeper into the garden, you begin to notice the smells of this fragrant place and the sounds, and you find yourself being drawn to a flower that has some very, very profound fragrance. And as you approach that flower, you can now feel the soft, velvety petals of that flower with your fingers and thumbs, and you can put your nose in the center of that flower and you inhale that beautiful aroma, allowing the perfume fragrance to flood through your whole being. But now in a few moments, I'm going to play a tone, and when you hear the sound of the tone, you get an impression of yourself drifting up out of yourself and looking down at yourself from a third person point of view. It'll be as if you're just lifting on up and looking down and seeing yourself down there in the garden, enjoying yourself in the garden. 3, 2, and now 1. And you lift on up, and you look down and you get an impression of yourself down there, enjoying yourself in the garden. And you can just see the top of your head down there. And even if you get a vague impression of that, that's good enough. But now, allow yourself to drift up higher and higher. And as you do so, you look down, see more and more of that garden down there. And you notice that your body's getting smaller as your consciousness drifts higher and higher. So high now that you can see for hundreds of miles all around. And as you drift higher still, you just temporarily leave down there that body-mind personality of your present body, just temporarily. And instead you more begin to tune into and identify with that light and energy and consciousness that animates the body. You more begin to tune into that soul self of pure consciousness as you lightly and freely drift higher and higher. So high now that you can see the curvature of the earth, and you just keep going. You keep going higher and higher until that earth, that it becomes so small down there that it looks as though it could be about the size of a marble, and then a size of a pea, and then a grain of sand. And as you drift higher still, that earth just completely disappears. And you turn around and you look up and you continue to drift higher, further, deeper into space, away from where this earth was down there. And in the distance, there's a light. This is the light of source energy. This is the light of home in the ultimate sense. And as you drift closer and closer to that light, you begin to feel a growing sense of warmth and peace and calm. And as you get closer now, it's as though you're magnetically drawn to this light, just as the light is magnetically drawn to you. And it is as though you are moving on a current of light, a shaft of light that guides you and pulls you all the way up towards its source. And you now reach the outer reaches of this light and allow this light to now envelope you and pull you into its center so that you merge into the very heart and center of this light of source energy, and you simply rest here. You rest here and you begin to soak in these high vibrations like a sponge, allowing them to saturate your whole being. And you give the gift of your full presence to this light of source energy, and you allow the light of source energy to give you the gift of its full presence. And you breathe in now and feel the vibrations of deep peace. Breathing in deep peace right into the heart center. On the exhalation, allowing deep peace to flood through your whole being. And you feel what deep peace feels like. Feel what that feels like. Record what that feels like, because we're going to compare that with a different quality of source energy now, and that is the quality of joy. So you now breathe in and you feel that vibration of the word joy right into the heart center on that inhalation. And on the exhalation, allowing the vibration of joy to flood through your whole being. Feeling what joy feels like in comparison with the vibration of peace. And if you really tune in, you can actually feel that subtle difference. Most people might say that joy feels a little more vibrant and alive. And you breathe in another quality of source energy, which is unconditional love and acceptance. And as you breathe in unconditional love and acceptance into the heart center, on the exhalation, it just spreads through every cell, molecule, and atom of your being and all the space in between. And then as you breathe in one other quality of source, at this point we're going to tune into just one other quality. So you feel unconditional love and acceptance, and you now breathe in pure safety and security, another quality of source energy. And now you can feel that and relax your focus and just breathe in a combination of all of these qualities of source energy. Breathing in a combination of deep peace and of joy and of unconditional love and acceptance and pure safety and security. And because you are an energy being that comes from this source energy, we're going to take it one step further for just the next few moments. So for the next few moments, just allow any boundaries between you and this source energy just to melt away, so that you, as this energy being, melt into and merge as one in this infinite ocean of source energy. Kind of like an individual wave that just melts back into the ocean, becoming one with that ocean before re-emerging as its own unique individual wave again. And you expand out now on all sides into infinity with this tone. And as I play the tone, you simply follow the tone into the silence and allow that to enable you to relax deeper and deeper into your own present moment experience of resting in and as this source energy of pure creative potential. And while you're resting in and as this infinite source of pure creative potential, I'm going to ask a question and just feel the answer. From this vantage point, does it feel like there's anything in the universe that can harm you? The truth is that there isn't anything in the universe that can harm the most real, most authentic, most permanent part of you. And that is what you can beam down to your body-mind system. But before we do that, allow yourself to continue to rest in this light. And imagine that you look down, and instead of the earth being there, there's a line. Duality is now created. There's you in this line down there, and you see that this is a timeline of your life. Future is to the right, past is to the left, present is straight below. And while you're basking and resting in this source energy, you look down and let yourself drift all the way over to the very far left of that timeline, to the very beginning of the expression of your body-mind system down there. And then you move ahead about 2 weeks. Maybe, how about 2 months? So you look down and you get an impression of a 2-month-old infant boy or girl down there. And I'm going to ask a question and just feel the answer to the question. As you look down at that 2-month-old infant, ideally, should they be made to feel loved and wanted, valued, safe, secure? Of course. Are they worthy of love? Of course they are. Do they deserve abundance, love, and happiness in their life? Of course. It's truth. That's just truth, and we're only concerned with truth. And you watch yourself grow up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the teenage years, and you look down and you notice any programs, limiting beliefs that got formed down there on that timeline. Any limiting beliefs of lack or not good enough that somehow came from the outside of you, that somehow came from this trauma of separation, forgetting who and what you really were. And you take those energy of those limiting beliefs and you just release them all into a container. See them, feel them, sense them leaving, let them all go into a container. They all came from outside of you. They didn't come from the core of your being. And now you can take the energy in that container and you can toss it into a big incinerator, allowing it to be converted to pure source energy. And now, when you took on those limiting beliefs, whatever they were, a part of you got covered up and lost. You can get that back now in this now moment. So with concentration and from your heart, you tell your higher mind, your higher guidance system, God, the universe, the angels, the guides, you say, I want my own energy back. I want that part of me that got lost and covered up when I was carrying that energy. And you now see and feel and sense that now coming back to you as a beam of light. And let it come into your whole being. Let it come in now. And most people will feel a lighter energy coming back. And allow that to integrate into the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy bodies. With this tone, it now integrates into all of the cells of your being and your entire body, mind, and soul system. And you now take that light and you look down and you see a present moment, a present time of your body, mind system, and you beam it down to yourself down there. You can, in fact, beam down that love and light that you got back, that love and light of source energy. You beam down a conscious connection from your higher self to any of those parts in your growing up experience that most needed it. Picture yourself doing that. Imagine yourself doing that. Powerful meditation to do in the future. And now you beam that down to your present life self. And any time of stress that you see yourself moving through, you form a circle of light around yourself and you beam that love and light into yourself. And you see yourself creating the next best, grandest version of yourself, a version of yourself down there in which that body-mind system can be like a clear vessel for the brilliance of your soul self to shine through. Totally unimpeded by any of that old programming and conditioning that no longer serves or benefits you. And instead, you see yourself living through life using this body-mind system as a vessel for allowing the brilliance of your soul self, your higher self, of source energy to shine through you. Feel what that feels like. Notice what that feels like. If there were a word or two that could best describe what does that feel like, notice what that is. And now that's the energy that we're going to come back with today, and that's what you bring back with you. So I'm going to count up now from 1 up to 5. As I reach the count of 5, you can allow yourself to emerge feeling refreshed, alive, alert, feeling better in every way. 1, coming back together, body, mind, and soul, all together as one in your present body, mind, soul system. 2, leaving behind any heavy, dense energies, thought form energies that no longer serve or benefit you to carry, and instead you bring back with you the energies that do serve you, the thoughts, feelings, beliefs that do serve you. You bring that all back together along with a renewed connection to your own higher self and of source energy. You bring that all back with you now as I count 3, and you now begin to feel the full support of the chair beneath the back, beneath the legs, taking deeper breaths into the body as I count 4. Feeling the arms and legs in the chair, feeling body in the chair, feeling breath in the body. Breath is the link between the body and this eternal part of you. So as you tune into the breath, you'll tune into this eternal free part of you. And now with that, take 1 more nice, deep, purifying and cleansing breath. And 5. And wide awake. Welcome back to this dimension, this physical dimension. We have 2 parts to us. This body-mind system, which has an ego, and we also have a more permanent aspect of yourself, which you couldn't even escape from if you tried. It's based in love. In closing, I'm just going to share some pertinent words of wisdom from Tarun Sardana. He says, we don't need a reason to be happy. We need a reason to be unhappy. Happiness is our real nature. When a seeker reaches the self with a capital S, bliss is experienced. And that is the very nature of the self, your true self. To make a river flow, we not need give any instructions or reasons. We just need to remove the barriers that we have put up, and the river will start flowing on its own because flowing is its very nature. In the same way, bliss is the very nature of the self, the true self. One needs no reason to welcome it. Just remove the barriers of the ego self, and the true self shall show up as Sat Chit Anand, truth, consciousness, bliss. Thank you. Feel the connection of everyone here. Feel this circle. May we grow from ignorance to wisdom. May we grow from restlessness to peace. May we awaken out of egoic identification and awaken into the highest dimension of our being, which is pure love, unconditional love, that which you already are. We are on a journey to become that which we already are. And may we bring that truth into our lives today. Om. Peace. And amen.